Internet horror helped popularize the idea of cursed media. Stories of haunted video games or movies that can scare you to death can easily captivate one's imagination. But is there any truth to it? Can a song actually harm you? Can art contain a curse or incantation? Please join me for some of my favorite real examples of cursed songs and killing jokes. Back around 2005, the product support team for Windows XP was trying to solve a very strange problem. A certain brand of laptop was crashing, and the singular cause seemed to be a music video, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation to be specific. It wasn't a software bug or malware either. Playing the video loud enough would crash surrounding laptops, and sometimes the laptops from different brands entirely. This wasn't just any music played loud enough, it was only this song. So was it cursed? Did Janet Jackson weave black magic into her rhythms? Obviously not. As it turns out, thanks to some later investigation, the non-standard tuning used in the song's bass just so happened to match the resonant frequency of the small hard drives used in these particular laptops. See, all objects are subtly vibrating as a result of the movements of their atoms. If you create vibrational waves in the air, that's what sound is, that match the frequency of that vibration, you can amplify it. That's why you can get one tuning fork ringing by hitting a matching fork beside it. And it's how singers can shatter glass by singing the right pitch loudly enough. By coincidence, the pitch of the lower bass notes in Jackson's video were resonating with the hard drives, vibrating them just enough to disrupt it and cause a crash. The hard drives recovered just fine after, and as a mitigation to the problem, the manufacturer added a special audio filter to their software to prevent their laptops from even playing sounds that would crash their own hard drives. It may not have been malware, but experts say it's not hard to create software that can use even cheap consumer speakers to create sounds loud enough to cause harm to humans, or even melt the speaker's own electronics. Who's to say a hacker well-versed in the specific resonance of computer components can't convince computers or phones to break themselves with their own speakers? In 1969, a sketch on Monty Python's Flying Circus revolved around a joke so funny, to Germans, that it would kill people. 6 years later, this sketch would seemingly become reality when Alex Mitchell died, seemingly of laughter, while watching an episode of The Goodies. Dying of laughter is a rare but known phenomenon usually attributed to heart failure or seizure. It's said that in 206 BCE, philosopher Chrysippus laughed so violently that he died after drunkenly feeding figs and wine to a donkey. He was 73 though, and healthcare before year zero wasn't quite what it was by the 1970s. Mitchell though? Well, many years later, his daughter started having heart problems which seemed awfully familiar to Mitchell's widow. She was diagnosed with long QT syndrome, a genetic disorder which can trigger cardiac arrest after exertion or an adrenaline surge, like laughter for example. Doctors are now convinced that this is what caused Alex Mitchell's death. The exertion of prolonged laughter triggered this specific genetic problem to stop his heart. So, there may not be a specific joke that can kill, but with some bad genetic luck, a good laugh can be your last. Alex Mitchell isn't the only person to suffer this fate. In 1989, another man seemed to laugh himself to death while watching a film A Fish Called Wanda. So far, no actual curses or magic, but thanks to Grant Morrison, I can present comics containing, in a manner of speaking, actual real magic. In The Book of Lies, the disinformation guide to magic and the occult, the Scottish comic writer has a chapter about, among other things, sigil magic. To simplify, sigils are magical symbols used to represent complex ideas and desires. They're a crucial part of chaos magic, a modern school of magical thinking that leans heavily on philosophy and psychology. Morrison reasons that things like corporate logos can function as magical sigils, simple symbols that can express complex feelings of nostalgia, power, and association. All this is to lead up to the fact that when Morrison started their comic series The Invisibles in 1994, they did so as an expression of what they call a hypersigil. In their own words, the hypersigil, or supersigil, develops the sigil beyond the static image and incorporates elements such as characterization, drama, and plot. My own comic series, The Invisibles, was a 6-year-long sigil in the form of an occult adventure story, which consumed and recreated my life during the period of its composition and execution. The hypersigil is a dynamic, miniature model of the magician's universe, a hologram, microcosm or voodoo doll, which can be manipulated in real time to produce changes in the macrocosmic environment of real life. To put it more simply, Grant Morrison created a comic that was either symbolically autobiographical or was an idealized autobiography in an effort to not only change his own life, but to try and affect broader society and reality itself. By their reckoning, it worked, but maybe not always for the best. In the closing letter of one issue of The Invisibles, they relate a recent near-death experience from a lung infection to similar problems they put their comic's main character through. Looking over the last year of The Invisibles, I can almost trace the development of my sickness through a growing obsession with viral entities and bacterial invasion from beyond. King Mob believes his face is being eaten away, and a month or two later, I get an abscess in my cheek. King Mob had a collapsed lung and bingo. I'm in a hospital ward. Miss Dwyer and her creepy pals from the Fever Zone begin to rage through these pages, while the Staph aureus bug lays havoc with my immune system. Subconscious currents or comics voodoo? You decide. The reading audience was even encouraged to play along at the end of an earlier issue in which a magical sigil was printed. The author asked all readers to help magically charge the sigil by simultaneously masturbating that November 23rd as a way to magically encourage better sales for the comic. It's hard to say how well that worked, but the comic did continue on for 4 more years. To say media is cursed usually implies that it's either creepy and unsettling, or that its production is rife with unexplained problems for everyone involved. The production of movies like Poltergeist or The Exorcist are said to have been inexplicably dangerous and even deadly. In the case of The Bedlam in Goliath, the Mars Volta album, however, the claim of being cursed may be more literal, thanks to the band's use of a Ouija board when creating it, and the magical traps infused into the lyrics. When guitarist Omar Rodriguez Lopez returned from a trip to Israel, he returned with a gift for his bandmate, a talking board, which the band would soon start to refer to as the Soothsayer, as they began to use it after shows while on tour. The messages gleaned from this board, as well as mysterious, anonymous poems found on papers hidden within the wood of the board itself, would be directly used as lyrics and song titles for their upcoming album. This seemingly innocuous use of a talking board for inspiration, though personal beliefs on how harmless a Ouija board is will vary greatly, soon brought with it a terrible rash of bad luck for the band. Omar's home studio flooded. Recording tracks mysteriously became corrupt or outright vanished. Vocalist Cedric Bixler Zavala wound up having a foot injury so severe that he required surgery to break and reset his bones, forcing him to relearn how to walk. Juan Alderete, their bass player, somehow contracted a rare blood disease. This curse upon the band came to a head when their engineer had a mental breakdown, intentionally sabotaging the production of the album, stealing the original recordings and threatening to destroy them. He accused us of making the equivalent of an infernal machine, Cedric said. Fearing the curse they had created, but not wanting to completely start over and lose an album's worth of work, the band set out to undo the curse with the album itself. According to Cedric, we wrote down a lot of the messages they gave us, and we used it in the lyrics, and we also tried to fasten the lyrics into a sort of good luck charm by putting positive elements into it. We used a lot of elements of Santeria, an Afro-Caribbean religious tradition, to kind of give us a protective skin when the record does come out. As for the board itself, Omar says he destroyed it. Broken in half and buried in an unknown location, its curse seems to have ended, and if the intent of the album is to be believed, entirely reversed by magic infused directly into the music. So far, we've seen jokes that killed, songs that acted like accidental cyber warfare, and a comic that nearly killed its creator. For our final example, I present to you a band that tried to end the entire universe with a song. In their 2015 album Moloch, Norwegian art rock band Gazpacho tell the story of a machine meant to simulate the universe from beginning to end. In doing so, it needs to measure the exact position of all atoms in the universe, and in doing so, destroys all of reality by simultaneously collapsing the waveform of every atom. If you listen to the actual CD on a proper CD player, the very last second of the final song ends with a strange digital noise which changes each time you play it. This noise is an exploitation of corrective software on CD players to generate a string of random numbers, and if, by chance, that number represents a measurement of all electrons in the universe, then, much like the machine in the album's narrative, all quantum waveforms of the universe would be measured and collapse. This is an extremely simplistic telling of a complex idea in quantum physics, but to put it plainly, according to this theory, each time you play this album, there's a chance you may accidentally measure all electrons in the universe, freezing reality and beginning the end of the universe. All of this is, of course, meant to get the listener thinking about the universe, morality, and the existence of God. You know, art rock stuff. To quote singer Jan Hendrik Ohm, if the universe's creation was just a Big Bang, which it was, then that could be reversed. If that happened, a lot of sense and meaning in religion would be a waste, and it has been for as long as mankind has existed. Keyboardist Thomas Anderson reiterates with, if the universe can be destroyed, then that means the universe is a mechanical place. According to that, you're just a chemical reaction. If we're just very advanced machines, then the moral aspect of destroying us is something which we need to question. Because what's wrong with destroying a machine? If we remove God, we have to replace morality with something else. It's a good album, by the way. If you're into art rock, give it a listen. But if you have the CD, maybe be careful with how many times you let it play to the very end. So, those are some of my favorite examples of actually cursed media. If you know any other examples like these, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. I've avoided stories about cursed movie productions, as they seem more like stories of coincidences and synchronicities. I also don't think it's very fun or kosher to talk about media that inspired actual death or murder, like Helter Skelter did with the Mansons. I was surprised to find that there aren't any actual examples of bands using backmasking to infuse any supposed magic into their songs, ironic or otherwise. Closest example I could find was Cradle of Filth in their track Dinner at Deviant's Palace, but that felt more just like an intentional blasphemy rather than actual magical intent. Again, let me know if you know any examples like that. I'm trying to get this channel to grow, so if you enjoy my content, I'd really appreciate you sharing my videos with anyone who might be interested. Friends, Discord chats, Reddits, anything like that. Hey, maybe if I create a magical sigil and ask everyone to... Never mind, more videos are on the way, so remember to subscribe. Until I see you again, take care of yourself.